Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I'm a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on October 18th, 2024 at approximately 4:30 p.m. PST. Now, I've returned to this world for one primary purpose, and that is to remind people that working together, we can make this a better world for virtually everybody. Now, I bill myself as a spiritual guide because the tools I offer are the exact same tools I personally use in my day to day life. And the philosophies of life I talk about are the exact same philosophies I use to guide virtually every movement I make. Now, I know these tools will work for you because they continue to work for me and have literally worked for thousands of others over the years with varying degrees of success, depending on their own personal efforts. Now, I made a mistake when I told Storm that I was up and ready, because usually, in order to see what's going on, I actually have the stream pulled up in the room on my other monitor. So I'm just going to do that for half a second. Shouldn't take more than a moment, and then we're going to get into an expanded look on numerology. And rest assured, when I'm talking about an expanded look, if you follow numerology, understand most of the calculations they have there or that they utilize in any of the books you've seen actually work really well. Actually work really well. Now, before we get any further into it, we're going to take a look up here, and we have Storm clearly in the house, ready to take care of any of the technological hiccups. And rest assured, those seem commonplace in my world. Whoa, welcome aboard. You are in with the gold. And by the way, thank you so much for all your effort there, Storm. Woo, you are in with the gold. Hope your day is going well. And there we have L.A. Moon in the house. And quite frankly, she's the one that keeps an eye on my health. Never mind the normal job of a moderator. What do we got here? Okay. Oh, I will tell you there, Woo, piece of metal in your tire is not going to hold the air in well. Yeah, no air is leaking out. I've seen that done before. But when I look at this, okay, now that's who we've got in the house right at this point. Oh, and there we go. Joe Stewart has just arrived. Joe, you are in with the silver. And of course, I didn't do what I was supposed to, so. Well, we can see today is going to be one of these wonderful days. We'll just shut things down that we don't require. Now, numerology itself, before I get into it, and I'll repeat this a couple of times, I'll repeat this throughout the run today. Oh, by the way, Joe, thank you so much for checking in. Yeah, I had a major, I considered it a major problem with my computer. And, Storm got that all sorted out. And then right as I was trying to get on board for a show, I had an emergency call that I had to deal with. By the time that was done, Tuesday was shot to pieces. Christine, you are in with the bronze. How you doing? Glad you could join us. Now, when we take a look at numerology, okay, understand. Let's start with the obvious. Why do people use base 10, as in the numbers from 1 to 10? Okay, now, here's the thing. I was debating it. No, I think I'll give you the formula first. For working out from a numerological standpoint, understand, I work with what I call base 12. In other words, the numbers from 1 to 12 are complete. No, in all fairness, I didn't get a new computer 6 months ago. I got a new computer 3 years ago. I just fried another one about 6 months ago. But when you take a look at the numbers at the base 12 numerology, okay, what you're doing is looking at complete cycles of 12 plus the addition. Now, in my case, okay, and I'll get into the numbers in a moment. In my case, the whole way you look at it, everybody does the same thing, no matter what race, what species. It has to do with the solar year of the planet you're on. Or more to the point, the solar year of the planet you were born on. So, in the case of humans, okay, humans, hybrids, doesn't matter. If you were born on this planet, okay, you take whatever your year age is. In my case, that's 61. You divide that by 12. Okay, now, so you take 61, divide by 12. This gives you 5 complete cycles plus 1 year, making 6. Now, the number 6, and we'll go through these in detail. The number 6 literally boils down to communication. This is the year where 90% of your effort is going to be focused on communication. If you're on a successful run, that is, it's going to be sorted around on the communication line. And communication, in case you hadn't pieced it together, is also a year where community matters. But that does not mean expanding your reach into community. It means defining what your community is. Where do you fit? Not how do you fit in, but what's your life going to look like? The key with communication is really, that's where you start internalizing and going, okay, where am I standing? Renee Andrews, you are in with honorable mention. How you doing? Glad you could join us. Now, this is at 61 years of age. This is my year of communication and community. Well, the first thing you look at when you start looking at the community and you start looking at the communication, you've got to take a look at you. Okay, you've got to take a look in the mirror. Okay, now if you're like me in the morning, you're not going to see yourself in the mirror. Of course, in the morning, I don't look in the mirror. But, and for penny sakes, guys, if you have a question as we go along, absolutely put your questions in the chat room in all caps. Now, the information today, I will be turning around and pushing to put it into a booklet form, which, because of the information we're going to cover and what I've already got in stock, you take a look at the year you're in. Now, there is only one group of people, only one, that ever has a 1 year. Now, this is going to go against a lot of what you've been told if you've been studying standard numerology. So let's cover where standard numerology came from. Okay, and every single species has their own way of doing it. And the way we start with humans, it was simple. With this form, you got it, 10 fingers. Now, needless to say, my hands work a little differently. This one separates sort of. Okay, but you've got 10 fingers. This is why your entire numerological system is based on the numbers 1 to 10. Or more to the point, 1 to 9. The 10th is the completer. Okay, there is only one group of people that has a year 1, that has a 1 vibration. That is newborns. Okay, but if you're going with standard numerology, LA, we've got Wu in with the gold. He came in right off the hop from what I'm looking at. Joe, therefore, got the silver. Christine snuck in with the bronze. Oh, wow. Now, people that are born with the year they're born, regardless of where, those are the only ones with a vibratory rate with a numerological number 1, meaning thought, beginnings. Everything after that builds on it. Even when you get to your 13th year, one complete year of 12, one complete cycle of 12, plus an additional year, you're now in a 2. Okay. Yeah, sadly, LA, this is one of the few times I actually managed to track that functionally. But, of course, in all fairness, I'm not entirely certain Wu is still in the house right now. But, when you look at the number 1 year, that is a year of thought. That's where it all begins. You never, ever, ever get back to another 1 year. Okay, never again will you. Because every year is built on the last one. Now, in base 12, when we look at the Fed number, where are we? Right, nope, not there. What, pray tell that? Oh, that's what I did with it. It's always nice if I keep an eye on things. Your year 1, the year you're born, which usually means you're laying there on a bed or in a carry-on basket, and you're thinking of all the ways. Oh, Ellie goes, Wu's limping a car home, I believe. Oh, okay. Well, not okay. Hopefully he gets home in one piece. In that first year, a child is trying to figure out how to communicate with his own body. He's trying to think, what am I stuck with? All these new images are coming in. All this new stimuli is coming in. He's got nothing, he or she has nothing to build a framework around. So from here on, and in the first year, it's all brand new. There's nothing in the corporeal world to be relied on. So then we move into, so that's the first year. That's when the kid sits there and cries to see what kind of reaction they get. That's when they're trying to figure out how their body reacts. And it's just a question of what they're asking, the 5 W's. Okay. Well, in all fairness, 5 W's and the H, which is who, what, when, where, why, and how. Okay. Now, oddly enough, when you put those 6 questions together, we go back to the number 6, which is the number of communication. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But as a newborn, regardless of the species, you're trying to figure out what you are, who you are, how you move at all. Okay, you get a thought in your head more often than not. It is directed, and again, we go back up the ladder. We've got thought being the first step in physical manifestation. Then it'll come from the etheric plane. It'll either hit your head first, the logic. And usually babies do not have logic as a functional force. It is something they learn. Once it gets to the heart, either it gets to the mind for logic or the heart for feeling. More often than not, what you find with a baby is they are driven by heart. This is what it feels like. So I want this, or I'm lacking this, and they start to scream, depending on the parent. Okay, now understand, I know this works because I was informed of it after the fact. If you start with a child that is screaming, and every time they're screaming, you fill their face with a candy or food, quite often they will start to see that. And this is what the massive majority of kids do. They see the food as something we call comfort food. Okay, parents go, here, have a bottle, stuff it in the face, the kid quits screaming. The parent goes, quiet. The kid turns around and goes, oh, I've got something to do. Now, in the case of one person I knew, every time they screamed, just about, okay, and bear in mind, the parents were very attentive to making certain that food was available. But instead of it being candy or it being something edible, they turned around and handed the individual a book. Albeit it was usually a plastic coated book. Because let's face it, one of the first things a kid does with anything is stuff it in their mouth. Okay, it is one of the primary methods of sensory input. So you start off on your first year just trying to figure out, you're having thoughts, I'm lacking something, you scramble around, reaching out with whatever method is possible and drawing that thought in. That thought either gets to your head or your heart first. But it's when your head and your heart agree. That's when you get mobility. But the second year, the one they call the terrible twos, okay, that is the year of choice. Because by the time they hit 2, they have figured out some of the communication techniques. Okay, so by the age of 2, they are now making choices. I desire this, so I am now going to choose to either go up to mom and ask her for something in my own way, which, by the way, in case you hadn't noticed, if you're a parent trying to communicate, or more to the point, communicating with a 2-year-old is kind of like semaphore and mine. Okay, it's a matter of specialized sign language because spoken language is another issue altogether. But during that second year, the child learns how to make choices. It's also during that second year that most parents will go, do this, or this is going to happen. Your call. You can carry on with that behavior. You can choose that behavior, or this is the outcome. If you choose this, it's one outcome. If you choose that, it's another. But it's a black and white choice. There's no weighing of anything functional. Sandra, how you doing? Glad you could join us. When you're looking at that choice, it is black and white. It is literally a toggle switch. I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. This is where all sorts of things happen. Now, it's really kind of neat when you think about it. Okay, a 2-year-old will decide what they're going to do. Jump ahead. Go to a 14 or to an 11-year, to a 13-year-old. You remember that funny thing called puberty? Okay, that is when you got one complete cycle of 12 and 1 year. 13-year-olds, on the whole, are reactionary, very much like a 2-year-old is. Okay, and I'm pretty certain if you guys have kids, or if you remember your own childhood, okay, your own teenage years, I'm pretty certain you'll remember that you were, to say the least, a bit temperamental. There wasn't a lot of thought process. All of a sudden, that logic would kick in and you'd isolate things, or you became very emotionally volatile. Okay, now, that's at that 13, or at 11, 13. Think, then speak. And again, the formula for figuring out your personal year is you take your age, okay? And this is the one difference between standard base 10 numerology and what I work with. Okay. It's the one big difference. You take your age, divide by 12, you take your full cycles. In my case, that makes 12 times 5 is 60, plus 1 is 6. Now, take a look at yours. There we go. And Sandra's just going, I got a 2-year-old granddaughter at home. You know, the nice thing about, no, that's wrong. I just about said something that could get me in trouble, and I don't want people doing that. But let's jump ahead a little here, shall we? You have your 1 year, your 13th year. You also have your year 25. These all add up. Okay. Because it's always a complete cycle plus 1. Oh, sorry, 25 is 2 and 1 is 3. Where are we here? Oh, yeah. I haven't worked it out all on cheat sheet here. But take your age, divide by 12, add the extra years on. So for every cycle of 12, okay, but at 13, you're also working on literally a black and white. It's like a toggle switch. Okay, one moment you're thinking someone one way, you take a look at the 2-year-olds, and one moment they can be absolutely killing themselves laughing. And I will tell you, one of the best types of videos I've ever seen for people to patch forward are laugh tracks from kids. Okay, we got to remember, you listen to a kid laughing, and it is infectious. It's one of those neat little diseases I'd love to see more of. Now, we move forward another year. You're now into the 3s. The 3 year, when kids hit age 3, okay, that's when they start exploring their creativity. That's also when they start recognizing that they've got an imaginary friend. Understand, it's, if it's an imaginary friend, the child can see it. More often than not, and some of you know this full well, they're actually seeing something very real. Yeah, LA goes, 13 was a very difficult year for me. Come to think of it, most of those following were a little challenging too. The funny thing is, when you take a look at the year 13, that is the beginning of another cycle. And your next 12 years are going to follow a very similar pattern with minor modifications. But this is one of those things I'm going to be taking a look at as I put this book together. Okay, literally, it is tentatively looking at being Numerology, an expanded version. That's a working title. Okay, or more to the point, an expanded understanding. When we're looking at it, that first cycle from 1 to 12 is all brand new stuff. You got nothing to work with. Okay, you're into a new cycle for the first time. No past record of it at all. But when we get into the age of 3, this is when you start getting the real creative side. Kids get very creative, and bear in mind, guys, if you're striving to raise an honest child, especially as they're growing up, they say your formative years are the first 5. Okay, well, in the 3rd year, they're learning by observation. Okay, and they are figuring out a creative approach to life. How do I take that gnawing desire I have in my stomach, that one vibration? How do I take that and utilizing the 2 vibration of choice. How am I going to create the situation that gets me what I'm seeking and eliminates that pull in my heart? How am I going to do that? This is where the creative energy of 3 comes in. Okay, now 3, 1 plus 2. Obviously, this means when you hit 14, your emotions are starting to come into balance. And I'll use the term balance really loosely, but you're starting to figure out how to actually get things stable so you can start attaining the things you desire. Now, hopefully you're with me this far. I am, like I said, working on putting all of this together into a book form, and I've already talked to Storm. We're going to be able to get it into a PDF form, making it very quick to put out. Don't know much more about the rest of it. That will come momentarily. Okay, and we'll figure all that out as we go along. But the number 3 is your creative side. When we move forward, okay, and we get to the number 4, the number 4 is literally your foundation. This is where children start to really figure out that home is a safe place. This is how they're going to view the rest of the world. This is where you're putting the foundation down for them to determine how are they going to interact with people. And the reality of it is, as a parent, as a guidance counselor, as somebody looking after young kids, okay, daycare, social work, whatever you want to call it, in that position, you got to realize these kids are utilizing your behavior towards them and each other as a way of dictating how they see the world. Okay, this is the foundation of how they're going to look at life over time. Whoops. You know, the neat part about it, when you take a look at things, that foundation here, if you've got a home where you're communicating with your kids, you sit down, eat with them, talk to them about their day. What did you do today, Junior? How did that work? Okay, did you enjoy that? If you're talking to them directly, they will learn to communicate. Now, I realize as children grow up, the big problem we have is, especially in the earlier years, you have too many kids. And it's hard to give one-on-one attention to all of them. But I hate to tell you this, no I don't. When you've got children, that is where your priority has to be. You took that responsibility on. Time to follow through with it. So when we get into the 4-year, this is the year of foundation. This is where the kid starts to identify exactly who they are, and in this case, in the new world. Never mind the family yet. We haven't even got that far. They're still working on, it's all about me. What am I doing? How do I make the things I desire to happen? How am I going to pull that off? And again, they're already going through the majority of the 6 questions. And again, those 6 questions, and we're getting to say to the power of 6 in a little bit. Okay, but that's community or communication. Okay, so that's who, when, what, where, why, and how. Okay, those 6 questions have to be asked. Okay, and if you're starting a self-analysis, keep those 6 in mind. We'll come back to them in a few minutes. But you've got your foundation, you've got that creative thinking, and by the way, at 3 years old, Children are looking for a creative way to explain things. They don't consider the question of, am I lying about it or am I making it up? They are looking at a toggle. I desire to get this message across. This is what I'm trying to say. So put the words together any way you can. Rachel, how you doing? Glad you could join us. I trust things went well for you. All the time this is going on, they're doing their best to figure out how they can get things. So when they're reaching out to you, as they communicate, that foundation, when they go to the communication side, they are asking those questions. But all they're thinking is, I'm hungry. I'm hungry. I desire something in my stomach. Don't know what. Don't know how to articulate it. Don't know how to call it. So I'm just going to scream about it. That worked when I was 1. It should work now. Okay. Now remember, however you've been teaching them, however you've been dealing with the complications, you're setting the foundation. Okay. When they are operating on the issue of the terrible twos, they've got a toggle switch. This is where you get, oh, my little angel, what the heck did happen to my little angel, and when did I dig up the devil? Yeah, that can be a challenge. Try putting Walmart and Safeway in the same place. That could be entertaining. But they are operating on strictly, I desire this. Therefore, I'm going to call on past experience. As a 4-year-old, we know that a 2-year-old temper tantrum nets a reaction. How you deal with it is literally how they're going to focus on things. Okay? And it is the foundational year you do it. When we get to year 5, okay, this is why kids are now able to go, why some kids are able to get into kindergarten. Because now they've got the cognitive capacity to start rationalizing what they're doing. It's not until that happens that they are starting to think before they react. As a 2-year-old, obviously 1, 2, 3, and 4-year-olds think. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to function at all. And rest assured, they're adults. I wonder about that. But at 5 years old, they've already figured out that they've got to start thinking and deciding. Now, number 5 is the number of expansion. Their world, which has revolved around the home until this point, now has to reach out. This is where they start learning their place in society. Now, you got 2 types of people. Okay, you got ones that listen and go, okay, I'm being told this is my place in society. And you got the other ones that go, okay, I see society and my place is at the top. And they will start orchestrating it very clumsily to start with. But you got to remember, they've only got the first third of the cycle. Okay. And oddly enough, we can take that first third of the living cycle and compare it to the first trimester while they're in utero. Okay. And like I said, everything is connected. And this is why I'm going through it one step at a time. Okay. When I get done tonight, I'm going to take all of this information and get it onto the backbone of the new booklet. The reality is that 5 year, that's when they go to kindergarten. Now, you're not just getting what mom and dad are saying or what the siblings are saying. You're getting what society is laying out. Okay. As parents, as guides. Okay, now I bill myself as a spiritual guide. And rest assured, I don't tell you all the dark things that happened in my life because you don't require them. And rest assured, Think of it this way. I remember my life as a Spanish Inquisitor. I'm thinking, yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed what I did. Not one of my better years. Okay, not from that standpoint. But when a kid enters kindergarten, they are being introduced to society. Yes, some kids are capable of going to kindergarten earlier. Absolutely, they are. And this is something I strongly recommend that you stay the norm. Because the problem is, many kids will develop logic faster than emotion, or vice versa. There's a lot of variance around that. But at 5 years old, it is literally all about me. Ellie's going, if a child doesn't get a full 9 months in utero, does this affect their ability to stay in sync the following years? In all fairness, the answer to that, Ellie, is it can adjust it. And thank you so much for bringing that to my attention, because when I'm writing the expanded view, I'm going to have to include that little issue. Now, by the way, that also brings to light the issue of if they are longer than 9 months, okay, at that point, does that affect their birth line? And the answer is yeah, it very definitely does. I'm going to have to bypass that one because that goes into a real complicated setup. But you are absolutely right. Okay, oddly enough, if you look at the number 9, and we'll get to that in a few minutes, but the number 9 is the number of discrimination. Okay, and the one advantage that I can think right off on the hop of running a 9-month cycle in utero is you learn how to discriminate some of what's going on in the real way in the physical world. Just marking down a note to make sure I get to that. One thing I did find, for me, notes worked like an absolute chart. Okay, with my life. Now, from what I gather, I was born on time. Of course, I was born on time and I died. And yes, that also has an impact. Again, this is a very wide issue. But the number 5, when kids enter school, this is the first thing you're looking at. Okay, is their interaction with society. Now, let's move forward a half a year. Okay, well, let's move forward a full one. To the age of 6. 6 is where you get the kids starting to really take a hold of the idea of community interaction, of getting their point across. Granted, in most cases, their vocabulary will not be very well developed. Can't imagine why not. Now, of course, I know, and I mentioned this before, my older brother was reading full-length novels by the time he was 2. So, little ahead of the curve. Okay, now the number 6 is your number of communication. That is when you start to really develop and actively seek out groups of people that are similar to your outlook. Okay, you start figuring out how to communicate by listening to the way other people do it. This is that learning curve. Now, of course, this is also where you start making that break. Okay, and by the way, this all ties into astrology as well. Okay, so we're going to have to take a look at that, but that's not for this book. What I'm doing is looking at another way of questioning things. Something dawned on me. The amount of information out here has to get out, especially if it's going to be out before I drop dead. Now that is a pleasant thought. For some of you, that actually works out really well. I drop dead, you don't have to deal with me. Of course, you guys do have an advantage. I'm not going very far. We've already made that as clear as I can. But the number 6 is the number of communication. This is when people start to learn how they start to figure out how to get things straight in their own head and how their own actions start to affect their physical body. Okay, this is pretty much, in my opinion, on the whole, the best year to start physical training. If you're going to teach somebody, get them into becoming physically active, regardless of who they are. Okay, you start when they're 6. They've got the brain capacity, and much more importantly, they've got the spiritual evolution to start being able to communicate. Okay, and these happen, like all of this takes place in cycles. But the first cycle of 12, from age 1 to age 12, is first time run. You're not building on anything. Okay, except, well, you're building on the experiences you have at the moment. Now, oddly enough, that can be chalked back to the first 12 days of your birth as well. Okay, and we'll get to the utero thing another day. Okay, because that goes into a whole different ballgame. Some of which I really don't have the vocabulary to do it yet. But 6 is when you learn how to communicate with the people around you and how to get along. Angels, how you doing? Yeah, well, I've thought about that. Yo, the ironic part there, Angels, and I appreciate the support. The ironic part is I was handed a very weird piece of information the other day. And with the stress I've been under, there is one simple reality to it. I either correct it in one heck of a hurry, or it is going to matter whether people want me to be around. Because there are no physical signs that there's a complication, but there is one that I sense. Okay, and if I don't bring my stress down, which is primarily locked into the finances, I don't bring it down. I was told 6 months, I've got to do something about it, which is what's prompted this new approach. Okay, but again, that's the 6 months, because if there's no physical sign, as in my blood pressure, my pulse, my limbs are all responding properly, I've got full sensation on all parts of my body, okay, because there's no hindrance that modern tech picks up, this means if it goes, it's going to go with a bang. Kind of like my heart popping like a balloon, which, granted, will hurt for about that long. But with that in mind, I am working very diligently on sorting that out. Now we move forward just a little more. We're going to move forward to the number 7. Okay, 7-year-olds, that is quite literally, that is the number of self-awareness. By the time a child is 7, they are already well informed of who they are. That's 7 years old is usually around when kids start going, oh, I'm going to be a fireman when I grow up, or I'm going to be a policeman, depending on the interaction that you as a parent or as an influencer has on kids. This is when they start determining what they're aiming for. And yes, by the way, if you're a parent that is tied in, that is tied into the legal, into the illegal side of life, into the black markets, into the violent side of things, okay, you're setting your child, you're teaching them how to be like you. Keep that in mind. Joe goes, I was in Special Olympics when I was a youngster. See, I was never good enough. I was never functional in the physical world, period. Of course, epilepsy will do that for you. But 7 is when a child starts to figure out exactly who and what they are. Now, in all fairness, I should say they start figuring it out the first 6 years. The 7th year is when they start vocalizing it and realizing it and making it manifest, meaning it becomes about them. They start to realize they are very much an individual and they do have an impact on other people. This is why, when we go back a few years, take a look at the people that were running companies way back, and we're talking 100 years back. Okay, 7's when you start to figure out who you are. 6 years later, you hit 13. Okay, but that's also the first year of your pre-adult years. No, I appreciate that, Joe. The reality of it is, everybody has a story. But Joe, this is the first time you've mentioned something that wasn't, not the first time. This is one of those few times that what you're bringing to light is something that wasn't buried by somebody else. Okay, but I got asked, did you ever get the gold? Because I've seen you get the gold here a couple of times. But at 7 years old, kids start to correlate their behavior as it applies to other people. But much more importantly, they look at what makes them feel better. Okay, you'll notice with a 7-year-old, this is when they start to decide what clothing they desire to wear. Or if they're that way inclined, they start to experiment with different styles, or maybe you'll see somebody all of a sudden going, gee, I'm going to start wearing my mom or my dad's shoes. Depending. Nothing wrong with it. Okay, it's a case of self-exploration. Okay, and much more importantly, self-awareness. This is where we end up really taking a look at things. Now, you take 7. Now, the same thing about self-awareness comes back around in a dominant position when you hit 19 years of age, just as you're starting to move into what is recognized as full adult. Okay, well, at least what's recognized as full adult here. Okay, in Canada and the US. Now, intriguingly, the year really doesn't matter. Okay, from a legal standpoint. From a spiritual standpoint, it matters an extreme large amount. That was really pathetic English. The neat part about it is when we look at 7, this is when you really start looking in the mirror. Okay, now, again, 7 you can break down into 4 plus 3 or 2 plus 5. You do the math. Okay, they all apply. Now, the nice part about it, okay, is that self-awareness is what's going to drive the rest of your life. All of these are first steps. Okay, but at 19, you do the same thing. At 19, you're acting on what you were talking about the year before. Remember, most people in Western society are graduating at 18 years old. Nope, they're usually graduating, close to 18 years old. By 19, most of you will have been out of the educational system. And that's something we will talk about at another point. But I will warn you, when I go down that road, I'm not going to be going, this is what's wrong with it. This is where we're falling short. You guys already know where things are falling short. It's time we focus on what's working. In the vibration of 7, we are looking at becoming aware of who you are and how your world is going to evolve. But that's up to you. Okay, now we're going to move forward. We step forward in the next side, okay, which is the number 8. Now, the number 8, your 8th year, this is when people traditionally start thinking and they start actively thinking in terms of how can I make money now, or how can I get ahead, how can I feel more comfortable now. This is where the problem comes in with adults. If you're struggling and you're constantly telling a kid we can't afford that, and you don't make a plan to get it, what you're teaching the kid, and you may not be aware of this, you're teaching the kid to hold back, to stop themselves from growing. Okay, now you may do this accidentally. And maybe you didn't tell them. Maybe you had too much on the go, and other kids were, which was my problem. There were other children older than me that were far more adept at stuff, so I just didn't get trained. Okay, because of complications. Not a fault of my parents. Understand, I was epileptic. And already, by the time I hit 8 years old, I'd already been dead twice. Makes things a little bit of a hiccup. Oh, here we go. Rachel's going, yeah, Joe, I was born crippled. 6 operations later, leg braces while I was in first grade. Yeah, everybody has hiccups. But thank you very much for bringing that to light there, Rachel. Okay, because I'll tell you, that's a rough run. Okay, I didn't get leg braces when I was a kid. Of course, in all fairness, I didn't have a bad leg until I was 12. But the fact is, everybody has hiccups, everybody's got holdups. This is why I take a look at things and go, yeah, there are restrictions people have. That's why we're talking in general. In general, at age 8, kids are starting to learn how to negotiate, how to make things happen so they can get the stuff or the feeling. It may not be physical stuff. Maybe they're figuring out how to get hugs more effectively. Okay, but this is what the year 8 is all about. I gotta say, I'm looking through this, and the one thing I don't notice in other chat rooms I've been in is the amount of sharing of personal information as a way that can be looked at as encouraging for other people. I do not see this a whole lot. Much more importantly, I don't hear about it a lot. But the year 8 is when you start looking at the prosperity level of your life. When you start thinking, how do I follow my heart? And this is the critical thing. When your head and your heart are in conflict, follow your heart, but use your head to get there. Okay, this is started at about age 8. And yes, there will be starts. Now, some people call them false starts. I just call them starts of a short duration. Okay, at 8 years old, this is when kids are actively doing more in the way of expressing their own ability, finding ways that they can work, earn an allowance. Now, earning an allowance can start as early as 5 years old, as 3 or 4 years old, really. Okay, but it depends on and I'm not going into the veracity of that. I was not a perfect parent by any functional stretch. Okay, but having dealt with over 100,000 clients, way over, where roughly 65% were relationship based, I got to deal with a lot of perceptions from parents. The number 8 is where you start looking at prosperity. Okay, meaning, how do I get more of what I enjoy? It's also where you start to really piece together and act on what makes, what encourages you to feel better. What do you actually like? And you start vocalizing what it is that you're seeking. Okay, I had an interesting situation with one guy, with one of my cousins. Well, more to the point, one of my father's cousins. Okay, where any meal, I kid you not, she would make 5 different types of meat, 5 vegetables, five types of starch, be it pasta or potato or what have you, and 5 different desserts. Okay, why she always went with 5, I don't know. I do know that she'd ask what I'd like, and I'd look at her and go, yes. I'd go, yes, please. You know, would you like apple or blueberry pie? Yes, please. And, I realized that was not a functional answer, but the reality is I wanted them both. Now, with the number 8, you are learning how to modify the world and how to influence the world on getting what you desire to draw to you. This is why it's called prosperity. But here's the problem. Prosperity with no guidance does not lead to success. Prosperity without guidance can dig craters in your life path. Okay, so this is where we move forward into the number 9. Now, hopefully this is making sense to all of you, or at least to the majority of you. Don't forget, if you've got a question, okay, when you've got a question, absolutely ask. Okay, now whether you ask here, which I do encourage you to do so, because many people listening or that are in the chat room itself have the same questions. Now, yes, the answer to that other little part, I'm actually taking all of this information. I've been redesigning my current life. I'm doing it on an accelerated path. Okay, I'm not waiting years. I am literally working on days to get things turned around. So, yesterday, I really went, yeah. No, day before yesterday, I put this plan in place. Yesterday, I literally started things moving. Uh-oh. Marianne, how you doing? Marianne goes, a joke for you from my 8-year-old. Who is the pirate's favorite YouTuber? Oh, that's terrible. That really is terrible, Marianne. Thank you very much to your son. Yeah. The answer, Keith Andrews. That kid's going to make a mark in life. And quite frankly, in all likelihood, he's going to make a very positive one. Now I gotta say that, and I'm just going to put it out there for you, and I presume that your 8-year-old is actually listening. But with your permission there, Marianne, I would love to put his name on the byline with that joke, actually in December's Positive Perspectives. Okay. And it's just a question of putting his name in there as a byline. But that is up to you. Well, up to you and him. Obviously, he's got to do it. November's Positive Perspectives is already complete. So it will be coming out on time. We've already started working on the next number of them. Well, Joe goes, oh, for crying in a water bucket, Joe, there are a lot of things about you, but I really, that kind of, like Joey's just sharing, he was diagnosed with an IQ of 62%. I'm telling you, there was something wrong with the way the guy was looking at things. Oh, there we go. Josie, that was absolutely great. I presume this means that yes, we can put our byline in. Now, the reality of it is, Marianne, I can put it in just simply as Josie, or if you desire her last name in there, we can do that as well. Just text me that or email me that. Certainly, you don't have to put it out on this venue. That's your call. But with your permission, it will go into December's. Okay. What are we here? I wonder if I can do that easier before I lose it. Okay, I think I can do this. We're about to find out. Blank document. And would you look at that? I managed to copy that little piece out and get it straight into, get it onto a doc file so I can move it. Okay, absolutely perfect, Marianne. And Josie, you will be listed with your own byline with that joke. This is why I change things on the fly. Oh, there we go. And LA is just letting us know Storm will post that. You know, as he put it, he loves it. You know, so yeah, that works out beautifully. And you know, this is something I've mentioned to people. Okay, whenever you get something in print, that is a way of mortality. You know, of immortality. You know, the reality of it is, whenever you put something in print, it is leaving a part of you there, or more to the point, putting a photo part of you there. In this case, that will be very much in the coming. Like I said, it'll go into December. It's already been set up, and I'm working on it anyway. You know, and again, guys, Positive Perspectives is a free magazine. Okay, that comes out once a month. So that's how that's sitting. But the number 8 is literally prosperity. This is how you start figuring out how to get the things in life that you desire to have and how that is going to impact other people. Oddly enough, it is also the year where people start figuring out, am I going to go about things in a congenial fashion or in a forceful one? Now, let's move forward to number 9, to the 9th year. The year a child goes into the 9th year, that's when discrimination comes in. Now, understand, discrimination is not a question of being a negative. It is a question of going, I've got 2 choices. Okay, but now I'm going to start things around. Okay, how am I going to, what is it I desire to get? And how am I going to go about it? This is when you start thinking and making plans. Okay, this is where that whole idea of a dream about the future suddenly becomes a possibility, because this is where you start learning how to definitively go, this is what I desire, this is the hole I'm feeling. Now I'm not reactionary. I'm no longer taking the 2-year-old side of things. I am now taking the choice, coupling it with self-awareness and realizing this is the way I desire to get it. 9 itself is also well, they call that the end of childhood because you're 10, 11, 10, 11, and 12, you're often referred to as a tween, between child and teenager. And again, you'll notice 10, 11, 12. We're back at that 3. Okay, like I said, everything is connected. Okay, all of it is connected. I'm an absolute idiot on occasion. But something just dawned on me, and I know she's not listening, but my other half happens to be a transcriptionist. The best way to take all this information is to literally put the money aside and get her to transcribe this particular video into a complete transcript, whereby I can pull out all the information. Because there is way more information in here than I was expecting, but that's okay. You know, the neat little part about this is the number 9 is when you start deciding which way are you going with life. How are you going about it? You know, that's the critical factor. But it's also where you learn how to interact with people and how to make your desires heard on a vocal level. Again, it's discrimination. Who do I tell what? What am I expecting to come out of it? And again, if you desire people to be honest with you, and rest assured, I can tell you from practical experience, this doesn't always work. But if you desire people to be honest with you, be honest with them. Kind of an important thought line. Now, 9 will enable you to, and this is the first 9 of a person's life. When they start figuring out how to approach things, how to decide, okay, I desire to get this message across. How am I going to vocalize it? And 9 years old is roughly when it starts to occur. Okay, it's an ongoing project. All of these things are ongoing. Okay, the reality of it is there has only been one person, well, technically 2, but in recent history, I knew of one person that got to the 12th cycle, the 12th part of the 12th cycle, as in hit 144. There was one African American I heard of about 25 years ago that lived to be 149. I'm aiming for at least 137, which, needless to say, with what I've already told you, means I'd better get things sorted out pretty quick. Okay, now, the number 9 is where you start to deal with discrimination. When you start choosing what you're going to do and why you're going to do it. By 9, all 6 questions are being asked consistently. Who am I? What am I? Where am I? Why am I? Who, what, where, when, why? And how am I going to operate with all of this stuff in this world? Okay, this all takes place starting roughly at age 9. Now there are always exceptions. We take a look at me. Before I hit kindergarten, I was teaching my younger brother about the life cycles of dinosaurs. Okay, needless to say, that created its own problem. But that's what your number 9 is all about. Okay. And no, number 9 gets kind of overridden when you start looking at the old song, Love Potion number 9. That was a whole different ballgame. But with the number 9, this is when you really start looking at how are you going to communicate to get precisely. This is where you start refining your communicative languages. Okay, and it depends on the upbringing as to how much option you get on that. But it's something you've got to come to terms with. Now, with that in mind, before we get to number 10, I'm not going to bother with getting another coffee right now because water is doing me more good. But I will be right back. And we will cover 10 as soon as we get back. And we are back. See, now that's the sound that I remember hearing. Okay, all's right in the world. Not really. But now we take a look at number 10. Number 10 is the awareness that is literally the year of awareness. This is when you start realizing, you start getting a solid picture of a quantifiable future. Oddly enough, or coincidentally, or intriguing, whatever word you want to use, I was 10 years old. I was 10 years old when it first became apparent that I could see what was going on. It became apparent to the public that I could see what was going on with their lives. Fascinatingly enough, I was pretty much blind to my own. But I'm starting to understand that one. But 10 years old is when you start becoming very aware that in the future, in your future, you are going to have to figure out how to make things happen and how to really look at yourself and go, hey, that funny little 4-word phrase. And I strongly recommend that if you haven't already, do this. These funny little words. I am worth it. Get them on your fridge. I've got one here. I got one above my computer that I can see all the time. one on my mirror on my fridge freezer, because on the fridge freezer, the fridge in virtually everybody's house is the one appliance everybody reads what's there. Okay. So, and I've got it on my fridge freezer and on my front door, and I've already had to talk to a couple of people about what I put on, about those 4 words and why they're there. This is also why they are on the front page of every one of the newsletters. Okay, at 10 years old, you're starting to accept there are things about you that are just there. Okay, and I will tell you, some parents will try and sugarcoat things and go, "Oh, you're not that different. Trust me." Well, don't trust me. I don't care. I do care, but you're gonna have to figure it out. At 10 years old, every single one of you, right from birth until you drop dead, you are unique unto yourself. Now, in a nutshell, everybody has a soul. Okay? And no, guys, sorry, I know some of you believe this, but everything living has a soul. You know, I hear some people talk about, oh, these are soulless individuals. No, they aren't. But that soul is what makes everybody unique, because you've been around for a very long time. Now, granted, to the best of my ability to sort things out, you're going to be hard-pressed to remember as far back as I do. But, you know, that doesn't make me better. That just makes me different. But at 10 years old, you start accepting the fact that you're an individual, and you start dealing with the side effects of the consequences that come about from your actions. These are usually started to understand. The consequence thing is usually started to be understood at 9, but by 10 it's in full swing. Okay, so at 10 years old, this is why a lot of the time many of you will already know, here is the strong suit of your interest. Here is where things are really taking focus. Now, there are kids, even in today's world, I'm seeing it more and more frequently around my area. We're starting to see kids making lemonades and putting lemonade stands out. These are the entrepreneurs of the future. They're the ones that are getting off their tail feathers and figuring out how to make ends meet. Now, this is one of the reasons I'm 61, okay? The first year of my 6th cycle. Now, my 6th cycle happens to be communication. Okay, this is year 1 of that cycle. Okay, which is why I've turned a lot of my attention to the books this size. They're a lot more economically acquirable, because all the books this size are going to be only $20 in your hand. Okay. Now, I'll figure out the pricing for the PDFs, but physically speaking, $20 puts it in your hand, signed, sealed, delivered, all taxes in, most places in the known world. No, I'm not about to ship these to the center of the Amazonian jungle. But if somebody wants to buy a bunch of them and carry them there, have a happy. We'll organize it. You know, we'll make it happen. But number 10 is the number of self-awareness. This is when you start figuring out how to go about making things happen. Okay, and how to really encourage people to follow in your footsteps, give you a hand. You know, one of the things we have to realize about the number 10, the fact you're aware of it does not necessarily mean you'll know how to go about making it happen. But we'll work on that. Now, just to make matters more intriguing, a novel thought. if I do that, okay, that's just a wild side thought. In any event, guys, okay, yeah, Liliana's just saying it fits in her purse easily for appointments and other places that take a long time to get through. As you can see, now my hand is only 9 inches across. Okay, so we're not, all I've done is taken a regular 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, turned it landscape, and turned it into a booklet. That's how big that is. Okay, all of these are the Believe in Yourself in Your series. The Meet Your series, which I'm working on, is another series that will be the same size. I do not know how big that series will be. I do know I'm now focusing on the smaller books. Okay, I'm still struggling to get the 2 bigger ones out. Those are still a priority. Number 10 helps you become aware of your limitations, aware of your strengths, aware of your drives. And I'm not talking about what other people tell you has to happen. Joe's going, when I was 10, which would have been 1988, my parents sent me to a special camp for underprivileged children. It was called SCAMP. Greatest times of my childhood. I met a girl there. So I got to ask Joe, just probably being facetious, but did you end up marrying the youngster? Obviously not when she was 10. Because of the fact that I had so many problems, I never did go to camp myself. My brothers went to Cub Scouts. All my brothers and my sister went and stayed over with people. I had what I called severe epilepsy, i.e., I would a minimum of 3 times a day pull the dead fish routine. At age 10, you become aware of just exactly not exactly how you're going to impact, but the fact that you're going to impact on people. Okay, this is just the reality behind life. Okay, and again, it comes right back around full circle by the time you hit 1 full cycle in 10, or 1 full cycle in 9, rather. Okay, meaning by the time you hit 21, you're back in that boat where you're really becoming aware of the impact of your actions. Okay, but it's up to you to ask the questions necessary. Okay, and this is why I say, when you're striving to do something, talk to somebody that's done it successfully. Okay, don't talk to me about how to behave as a millionaire. Never been a millionaire this lifetime, but I have shown millionaires how to make money. Well, why don't you have money? Well, because quite frankly, I went down a really bad road where I came to the conclusion that money was actually a massive problem. It's not. The view of it being a massive problem was the problem. So when you're looking at that, when we are looking at your awareness, this is a critical point. Now, let's move forward one more step here. We'll get to the number 11. 11 is the number of understanding. By the time you're 11, you've already come through the first year of that tween section where you understand some of the differences you've got. Okay, I was around 11 when I came to understand that no, what I was seeing and the way I could pull things apart was not normal. Okay, I also came to understand that being off center from the norm was problematic. This was when mom and dad really started pushing the idea of keeping my abilities quiet. Oh, there you go, Joe. I gotta tell you, Joe. this funny little thing here. Why is that in my pocket still? This neat little crystal came from a kid I met in grade 2. Okay, this is my healing stone, and long story behind that. And so I'm not going to go into that right now, but childhood connections are extremely important. Okay, and we usually lose track of people. You know, unfortunately, what I've come to see is that most of the people that I feel a connection to literally do not feel that same connection. That brings with it its own issues. But the number 11 is the vibration of 11 is the number of understanding. This is when your logical brain really kicks into gear. You know, as LA's putting it, first loves are always special and never forgotten. The ironic part is none of it's ever forgotten, but much of it is not recalled. And it's a minor thing. Well, not really, but very much the case. First loves can be the most impactful and thereby either the most rewarding or the most devastating. Okay, but it depends, it's something everybody goes through. And literally nobody, myself included, can say this is exactly how you're going to be able to cope with it, because it doesn't always work that way with love. Understanding that love it does have its own logic, but it's got its own imprint as well. Up. Oh, that's a few months away, yeah. What is that? I'm gonna have to check that afterwards. But anyway, very important factor here, guys. When we are looking at the way the reality is, with the way this world is, the number 11 brings about the understanding that you have a place in this world. But here's the kicker. You're the one that's got to forge that place. And that's what we are doing right now, is deciding, okay, how are we now? I started this way too late. I'm 61 years old. Guys, don't wait this long. Regardless of where you are in life, now is the time to start orchestrating where your life is going to go. Okay, and again, for those of you that missed the first part, to figure out the vibration of your life path, take your actual age, okay, divide by 4, take the four complete cycles of 12, okay, as in 12, 24, 36, 48, you get the picture? Okay, you divide by 12 and add the extra years to it to find out what your current personal year is. Okay, now, most of what numerology tells you, what basic numerology tells you, the calculations are correct. It's the numbers that I found are off kilter. But the number...
Cameron Andrews.
Okay, this is going to have to be taken. Family first, guys. Hello. Hello. Hey. Okay. Okay. I'm on air. Okay. Love you. Yeah. Okay. Family first. Definitely have to deal with it. The nice part about it is when we look at the number 11, we are dealing with a really cute issue of understanding that you have the ability to make your life better than what it was. But you gotta build on what you're standing on. It's that simple. Thank you very much there, LA. Just being warned that we're down to the 30-minute mark. Okay, now at 11 years old, you're already starting to act on the understanding that there is something about you. You have a place in this world. But what you're seldom told, what people seldom tell their kids, you got to start acting on it. I'm guilty of the same thing. Okay, I've got a 19-year-old that I'm having to override accepted programming on. That's what I'm looking for. But that's where the number 11 comes in. Now, if you think about it, at 11 years old, 75, I was 12. At 11 years old, you're tying off in Western society, you're tying off your elementary schooling. You've already gone through the first 7 years. Remember, again, we take that 7 and we wrap it around. And those first years in elementary school are when you come to understand who and what you are as society goes. By the time you hit around 11, you're starting to look at how are you going to start choosing what direction your life is going to follow. Are you going to help people? Are you going to hurt people? Are you going to walk on people? Your call. And unfortunately, society has a real bad habit of teaching some of the worst behaviors. And that's just what I've seen. Take a look at the world around you. Children are not born prejudiced, greedy, violent. Okay, they aren't born jealous. All of this you're taught. Okay, by 11, you have an understanding of you. Okay, and from there you start to grow. Now, this is where we move into that other neat little thing, the age of 12, the last year of your tweens. Okay, the number 12 is the number of ultimate wisdom. Okay, now we are talking about at this point first stage vibration 12, ultimate understanding of wisdom, of who you are, what you have come to, and what you're capable of at this point. Okay, this is what you go into middle school, into your junior high, or I really don't know what they call it anymore. But this is when you hit grade 8, when you start getting electives and what have you. It is also the average time when a child starts looking at the parent and going, can I do this job? And can I take over this responsibility? Okay, it varies by the individual. But the number 12 is the number of ultimate wisdom. Okay, now I'm now 61, meaning I went through the first 5. Okay, I've gone through the first 5 cycles, meaning I've already gone through cycle number 5 expansion. Now I'm going into cycle 6. Okay, which is where I learn about communication. Okay, communication and social impact. Okay, as well as the impact of community. And this is why I say that I am not planning on shutting this down. My computer may have a problem with it, but now is the time that we start pushing the idea and grow Inner Voice Enterprises to its proper level. Oddly enough, and I'm just curious here, we are in 24, making 14. 18 and 3, 17. Now, ain't that neat? See, Inner Voice Enterprises started in 2007. We are now 17 years in. Still haven't done jack with it. Okay, but when you look at 17, one complete cycle plus 6, we are in our 7th year right now. Okay, with that in mind, this is why all of a sudden I'm hitting self-awareness. Inner voice I'm hitting community and communication. Inner voice is becoming inner voice and what it should have been way back when it was first conceived. Okay, and again, inner voice, of course, is in its 2nd cycle, the cycle of choice. This is where we start laying everything out. Okay, should have started a long time ago, but remember, shoulda, coulda, woulda. Or if I knew now what I knew then, if I knew then what I know now. There we go. Think before you speak. Okay, one day I'll remember to do that. But the number of ultimate wisdom, when you hit 12, this is when you go, okay, I as an individual am now complete. Now, how do I figure out how to interact in a small unit? Which, by the way, smallest unit I'm aware of is either family or chosen family. This is your inner circle of contacts. Okay, it's also what you're exposed to and how you've been educated. Okay, but the number 12, at 12 years old, you are on an individual level, on an isolated level. You are now very much aware of where you are. Whether you act on it or not is another question altogether. But it is one of these things we have to look at and go, what am I doing from here? Okay, that's the real big issue that we have to take a look at. With the number 12, you now know making excuses for you is not going to do you any good. You already have experienced the fact that putting things off doesn't get you the results you're looking for, unless you're just looking for a delay. Okay, but this is why all the things you've gone through are now culminated in a very solid understanding. We can break it down into a lot of different ways. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Joe's just put in here. I'm glad I shared that stuff on here. Wow, great show, great bunch of people. And LA pipes up and goes, Storm and I really strive to help Keith make a safe place for everyone. We appreciate you felt you could. Absolutely. Because if there's one thing I personally have a major problem with, is this issue of people berating other people or bullying other people. I have, shall we say, a less than amicable outlook on that. But I have also looked at what I've been doing, trying to figure out where I'm standing. Now, I'm going to put it out there because I've asked other people, but it's very simple. In my eyes, I've got to take a look at how to bring this all together. And the funny part is, all of what I've been talking about, guys, every single word I've been talking about the vibratory rate and the numerological implications, apply to every species, animal, plant, human, off-world, ancient race, elemental. You get the picture. Okay, all of them have the same issues, especially given that we are looking at a vibratory rate and we are talking about what goes on here. And here's the neat part. When we look at the vibratory rate, okay, we are in the 3rd dimension. Okay, This is the dimension of creativity. Literally speaking, when your mind can conceive it and your heart can believe it, you can achieve it. Oddly enough, that can be changed mildly to you can create it. By working together, we can make this a better world for virtually everybody. Okay. Now, when you reach that first 12 cycle, you're already aware of your own person. Now you move into the next cycle. Okay. And I'm thinking, boy, that's tiring. The thinking part. Gonna bounce a couple of ideas off. But down the road, I'm thinking it might be an idea, and absolutely let me know. Okay. I'm bouncing around the idea of looking at cycle 2 of the numerological impact. What we've just gone through from age birth to age 12. I'm looking at down the road a piece, coming back and visiting this with ages 13 to 24. Okay. Just a thought. Don't know if I'm going to do it yet. And in all fairness, your guys' input would be greatly appreciated. I got a lot of things we're going to cover before that, but it is something to think about for down the road. This is October. So we'll see how that goes. But the important factor we have to remember here, everything vibrates at its own rate. Okay. And numerologically speaking, yes, there's a lot of things that change. And if you really desire to get into the calculations, okay, if you really desire to get into the calculations, look up any standard numerology book that you can find. It the concepts work, but what I've been talking about is working with the numbers 1 to 12, okay, as single digit. There's a lot of reasons for that, not the least of which is in what I call base 12 or universal numerology, which might be, I don't know what the actual title is, what to actually put a name on it. I'm betting that LA Moon is likely going to come up with something really solid. But the concept is this. With the 12 numbers, that cycle only has one number that vibrates at the number 1. One letter that vibrates at the number 1. Okay, because after you get through that first one, from there on, you are looking at literally an issue of being able to build on whatever you've done again. You never come back to a 1 vibration. You will come back to a 2, which is why when you get to 12, you've hit 12. When you hit 13, it's 1 complete cycle plus 1, making 2. Numerology itself talks about vibratory rate. Okay, now I'm just going to throw this out there. People keep talking about are we moving to another dimension? The answer is, in my opinion, not a prayer. You're in the 3rd dimension. However, all things vibrate at their own rate. Okay, and it's when things vibrate at the same rate that you start getting solid material. Okay, it's not because there's no space. It's because they vibrate in a max set. I appreciate that, LA. The fact of the matter is, I've been taking a look at it and going, where is there a flaw? There's got to be a flaw. There almost always is. I'm working with a system I have not found a flaw to yet. But what I have found is that there is so much publicity out there for standard numerology, okay, that there's a lot of limitation that's been built in. I found the same thing, by the way, with astrology, feng shui, much of the psychology that's out there. No, I'm not better than anybody. Okay. In all fairness, LA, I don't even know the Chaldean system. Okay. And in all fairness, I haven't read any of it. I've read the basics on standard. Okay. But this is what I mean by I wake up with this stuff. I woke up and was debating whether I should do that. Oh, it died. My phone died. Now I'm depressed. No, got over that pretty quick. God, I wish depression were that easy to get over. But when you are looking at the way life is, okay, when you take a look at it, there are flaws in a lot of things, but understand, okay, and many of these we will go into down the road, but understand something very critical. The different races I deal with, whether we are talking ancient races, off-worlders, different time periods on Earth, all things go through these same paths. Oh, okay. Ellie goes, actually, your system sort of concludes what was wrong with the Chaldean. And the funny part about it is, and I don't know if it's funny, I still don't see myself as better than anybody. I really don't. Everybody has their strengths. Everybody has their weaknesses. I could tell you some of my weaknesses. I can honestly tell you I've got a fat head. But we discussed that a long time ago. That's not a weakness. I've got kind of a glasses plate right here. This is useless information for you. The average large hat in Kelowna, where I am, is an extra large. Okay, you can get double XLs for shirts, which is what I wear. But my hat is a 4X. Okay, again, I'm not better than anybody. I am just different. And this is why I say, if you have a question, or more to the point, when you have a question, absolutely ask. And answer that question nobody's really vocalized. Yes, I am building a course in the enhanced numerology. But the reason for it, most of it I'll be able to put in a book this size. Okay, it's just a kind of a complicated setup. And I honestly probably speak way more than I need to. But I have found repetition works very well to help people understand things. Okay, and apparently we are down to 12 minutes. This is one of the things that LA is absolutely fantastic at. That making sure I don't actually terminate myself by getting too stressed out. Hopefully that works. And this is one of the reasons why I've got to get finances moving. By the way, the other side of that is, yes, I have decided to go back into the consulting side. But I will warn you, because of the number of stupid people that I get calling on this, if you don't text first, okay, or if you don't drop me an email first, the odds of my picking up on a line that I don't know who it is, okay, the odds are not good, because I end up hearing the first couple of words and going, not interested, I just look at it. There are so many scams out there that I just don't deal with them. Is that right? But Keith, you're trying to build your business. Well, number one, not trying. Number two, building it Yes, it requires communication. It does not require stress from idiots. And the number of people, I actually hung up on a guy that could end up being a client. But I get so tired when I'm talking to people, and it happens all the time, where I'll get asked a question and the person asking it will cut me off and either go, I don't want to do that, or that won't work, right? Before I finish explaining things. This is one of the reasons why, when the psychic line I was working for closed, I didn't go looking for a new one. Okay. But when we look at it, the first 12 numbers, the first ages 1 to 12, okay, and age 1, by the way, starts the day you were born. Okay, but to facilitate this one little detail that was brought to mind, what happens with numerology if you're born premature or if you're born late? Okay, and this is where you run into an interesting setup. I will end up writing an article and popping it into positive perceptions, positive perspectives. Speaking of which, should have left this out. Longer. We're in October right now. Like I said, November is already set to go. Don't know if you can read that. Okay. But that's positive perspectives, the November 2024 edition, which, by the way, means we're in about our 18th month. Actually, that's the 17th, which again, 17, one full cycle, plus 5 is communication. Okay. And this is where we are at this point. Where are we here? Right there. Now, what do we got here? Should have mentioned this, but the last couple of minutes, we are looking at tomorrow. Tomorrow, okay, on Saturday, we're going to be looking at the link between dreams and reality, and quite frankly, how to bring them into reality in some cases. Then on the 20th, we are going to look at the difference between dimension and vibration. Don't know exactly what that's going to be titled yet, but that's for tomorrow and the next day, and we're working on the others. Okay, with that in mind, where are we? We are there. With that in mind, I was intending on having that done before the end of this stream. Apparently, that's not going to happen. Okay, but I've got the next 2 days laid out, and we'll take a look at the other ones. Absolutely, if you've got questions or suggestions, whatever, including topics, drop me a line, either in the comments below. Let me know what you think. I've made an absolute focal point of getting to them. So some of you I haven't got back to, I know this. But I have made a very definitive plan to make all of this happen. And the reality of it is, I'll take as many people with me to the top as I can get away with, as are interested in following. One of the big things we got to look at is get the word out that we are no longer sitting around relying on other people to figure out how to change society. We've got to get it done. Not the people that we put in positions of power. Putting them in positions of power, necessary, but it's also necessary we take responsibility for our own lives. With that in mind, Ellie's just letting us know that we're at the 5-minute mark. Therefore, guys, thank you so very much for sharing your time with us today. Love the interaction. Love the questions. Absolutely brilliant. Okay. I will be back again tomorrow. Okay. Well, assuming I'm not dead or the computer doesn't die, you get the idea. So I will see you again tomorrow, 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. Pacific time. Okay. And then, well, and like I said, tomorrow we're going to be looking at the link between dreams and reality. Okay. Until then, absolutely. Do make sure you take care of yourselves and each other. And for pity's